Hey guys, and welcome to This Week in Barbecue. My name is Rashid Phillips. I'm your host, and This Week in Barbecue is the podcast that brings you the latest and most up-to-date, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent in the barbecue community. I do know one thing and one thing for sure: news never tasted so good. So join me as I bring you up to date with everything that's occurred this week in barbecue. Let's dive right into it. We're going to open up with an amazing story from Milwaukee. A gentleman by the name of Jason Alston, who runs a barbecue business, who's actually fairly new to that world. His business isn't that old, is working on making change using the power of barbecue. You guys have heard me say time and time again that there's so much good that can be done to communities and those around it using the force and the skill and the craft of barbecue, and Jason is one of those shining examples. Now, Jason admits that he learned and sort of got this bug by watching his granddad and his uncle barbecue, and it just sort of spoke to him, something he wanted to do. He also admits that when he first started, like a lot of us, you don't really know which way is up. You don't really know how to properly start your fires, how to manage your temperatures. It's a learning experience. Everyone learns. No one starts perfectly. So keep that in mind, guys. Now, what is Jason trying to do? Jason is trying to put together a program in which he can help instill a lot of the knowledge that we don't really think about when it comes to barbecue. Things such as accounting, bookkeeping, marketing, the legalities and things of that information that you need to know to actually run a business, to turn that hobby, that passion, that love from just the backyard to Wall Street, if you would. Because as you've heard in previous episodes, there's a lot of money in the world of barbecue, and Jason wants to make sure that everyone coming up behind him has resources. He highlights and speaks on the fact that resources was one of the most challenging things he realized he didn't have. That type of information isn't passed down. It isn't taught in schools. It's very much a learn as you go, sort of build the plane as you're trying to fly type of thing. And Jason wants to make sure that the challenges and obstacles that he faced don't necessarily have to be passed along to the generations behind him. So he's working on putting together a course that will have that level of information and really help propel the backyard barbecuer forward. And Jason is very familiar with this process because with the level of perseverance that he had with help from his friends and family, he was actually able to open up his restaurant in the west side of Milwaukee, Heaven's Table. So Jason, thank you for all that you're working on. Thank you for everything that you're trying to do for the community to push forward and lend a hand to others and lift up those coming behind you. Jason, if you hear this and you need some assistance, or if there's anything I can do, please don't hesitate to reach out. You guys make sure to go check out Jason's restaurant. I'll have his link and social media information in the show notes below. Let's get going on to our next story. Now guys, you've heard me say time and time again, times are hard, things are difficult, inflation is extremely high, the costs of our goods, which is meats and proteins, are extremely high right now, and sadly, it is causing a lot of smaller mom and pop locations to shut down. We've lost another restaurant in the barbecue community. Ladies Smokehouse has closed down. It just seems to be a reoccurring theme every week as I'm going through reviewing, culling articles. There's just a never-ending list of restaurants that are shutting down because meat costs are so high. During a reading posted on agriculture.com earlier on this week, they speak on the fact that cattle heads are down 2%. Now, 2% may not necessarily seem like a lot, but when the numbers are 90.1 million and we're talking about 2%, that's a vast difference in the amount of cattle that are going to be available. And for things of that nature that sell heavily and are always at the forefront, like brisket, remember there's only 2 of those per cow, that really starts to make a huge impact. When you have these other businesses, as mentioned in last week's episode, Arby's and Quick Trip and so on, that are offering these smoked brisket sandwiches and such, it really starts to eat into the profits and the level of quality and work that the little guys like us can really put out. We're really going to have to fight tooth and nail to maintain our already small market share. of this barbecue business. So what can you do about it? It's kind of hard. You really can't fight the numbers. Some people are having to increase their prices, though it is not specifically barbecue related. I was reading an article of a taqueria who had to increase their prices, and people sort of went crazy. I mean, they increased their tacos from $129 to $185 just because their cases of avocados went from $10 to $25. Could you imagine? Well, I know some of you can. Personally, for me, I've had to really slow down on doing pop-ups. We've had to limit the amount of catering we can offer because costs are so high. You take what was once a $50 brisket and then you slap a retail sticker on it of $115 before it's even trimmed, cooked, and processed. It's outrageous. It really is. There's a lot of things coming. There's so much change ahead, guys, that we're going to all have to pivot and move as a unit in the right direction to overcome this. It sounds daunting, and honestly, that's because it is, but it's not anything that can't be overcome if we all work together. Now, speaking of working together, I know that was a little heavy, guys. I had to get it out there. Like I said, good, bad, or indifferent, we got to make it happen. But speaking of working together, for the second year in a row, Kingsford is bringing back their Preserve the Pit program, headed up by none other than Dr. Howard Conyers himself. Now, what is the Preserve the Pit program? If you're not familiar, let me bring you up to date. The Preserve the Pit program is a program put together by Dr. Howard Conyers in conjunction with Kingsford Charcoal. Everyone knows Kingsford. Your dad's dad used Kingsford, and it has left an amazing trail in history in the world of barbecue and backyard barbecue. So Kingsford has decided to pay that forward by creating and aiding with the Preserve the Pit program. This program allows barbecuers to apply for fellowship, and this fellowship allows those barbecuers to be mentored hand in hand with some of the industry's best leaders in the world of barbecue. Some of the amazing mentors that are part of this program: Rashad Jones, Davita Davidson, you've got Amy Mills, also everyone's favorite, you should recognize him from America's Barbecue Showdown, and so many other accolades. The king of Compton barbecue, Mr. Kevin Bloodstone himself, along with my big mentor, Brian Furman, who is just an amazing person. They've got an all-star lineup for mentoring, and I really can't think of another group of mentors that would do a better job of guiding these fellows through this program. Last year, there were over 1,500 applicants. That is a lot of people, right? So to have it come back this year is a very great cause. It's going to help so many. And Kingsford is not stopping there. They've actually created a custom bag instead of your typical Kingsford bag that we're all familiar with. They've partnered with Brandon Odoms, aka B Mike, an artist, to illustrate the purpose of giving back. I believe the bag is titled Pay It Forward, and it's just got an amazing design. You're going to be able to pick that bag up at Walmart retail stores everywhere. So snag one even to use or just to toss in the garage and keep for memories, a little sentimental aspect there. But Kingsford, as a part of this, they're taking $1 from every bag sold, and they're going to contribute that money into the Preserve the Pit Fund up to $750,000 worth. I don't know about you guys, but that is a lot of money and a lot of good. So good on you, Kingsford. Amazing job. Dr. Conyers, Kevin Bloodstone, Ryan Furman, the whole crew, everyone out there, those mentors that are going to help those fellows grow their businesses and teach them previously what was mentioned with Jason, what he's wanting to do, teach them the resources, teach them the true business of barbecue. Very excited to see who they select. If you're looking to participate, if you're looking to apply, I'll have all the information in the show notes, but you can go to kingsford.com or preservethepit.com and apply. You've got until March 1st to apply. I definitely suggest you do it. Toss your hat in the ring. You never know what happened, right? And they're going to be making an announcement, I believe, in March. Nope, they're going to make an announcement in April. So you've got some time if you want to put some stuff together, get a buddy to take some photos of you, get some help with the write-ups. It's an amazing opportunity. And I think if you are in the business of barbecue and you're wanting to learn more, this is an amazing opportunity to do just that. Piggybacking on the cause of doing good in community, piggybacking, that's a joke because this is a barbecue focused podcast. Anyway, I digress. So continuing on, I should say, there's a lot of good still being done. There's so many people doing a lot, and nothing says barbecue's making change than getting $10,000 donated for Toys for Tots. Yes, that's correct. $10,000 for Toys to Tots, worked and done in conjunction with Bob's Watering Hole and Fat Boy's food blog teamed up. They put together a barbecue-based competition, and they were able to raise $10,000 for Toys for Tots. If I haven't said it enough, you guys may be tired of hearing it, but I'm never going to stop saying it. I love hearing stories of barbecue affecting communities and helping, especially when it pertains to children. You guys know how much I believe in giving to children, aiding them, because they are the future. We've got so many talented pitmasters up and coming that, could be just watching mom and dad in the backyard rolling with some smoke. So I loved hearing that story, and I could not let this week go on without sharing it. I'm going to have some more information on exactly how they did that in the show notes below, but good on you guys, and please keep up the amazing work. All right, it seems like everything in Texas is shifting left and right, north and south, but we've got another festival that's coming back. We've got the Houston BBQ Festival coming back in Hubble, Texas in April. That's amazing. I'm very happy to see and hear about all of these festivals coming back. That's how a lot of guys get noticed. That's how a lot of guys market and get catering gigs and so forth. And get their name out there is at these barbecue festivals. COVID really put a dent in things like this, which really hurt the community, but it's always great to hear that these events are still going to be taking place, that they're going to be safe about it, and we're going to be able to expand and grow the community as a whole. So good on you guys. I hope it's an amazing turnout in April, and I will be covering it when the time comes. All right, guys, it is time for the hot and fast section of This Week in Barbecue, where I run through rather quickly some really amazing highlighted keynotes that happened throughout the week in barbecue that I think you should definitely know. Let's first start off with books. It is book season. We have the amazing Matt Horn, who we featured in episode 1 of This Week in Barbecue. Matt is releasing a book, and you can pre-order it now. I'll have the link in the show notes below, so stay tuned for that. Also, following up with books, Kevin Bloodsoe has a book coming out as well, and you can actually pre-order that too. If you guys are wanting to get into the world of barbecue, you want to understand the recipes, hear the stories, get the lineage, and really be fully immersed, snag these books up. They are a must. I have already pre-ordered mine. I hope you pre-order yours as well. Now, continuing on with the hot and fast news, we've got another familiar face and voice, Miss Melissa Cookston, along with Mr. Tuffy Stone. All right, they have teamed up, and they are going to be doing a Legends of Barbecue class and course that you can sign up for. All right, it's a multiple day course, I believe in April. I'm going to have that information in the show notes below, but it's great to see those two pairing up and passing on the knowledge of barbecue. There's plenty of room for all of us. All right, and we've got the Beer, Bourbon, and Barbecue Fest going on in Curtis Hickson Park in Tampa, so that's going to be occurring again this year. Show notes information, you guys get the drill by now. And lastly, to wrap up the hot and fast info, a little bit of a shameless plug going on here, but if you guys aren't aware, aside from just doing This Week in Barbecue, I also have another podcast called Entree. Entree is a podcast that introduces you to early stage entrepreneurs in various stages of their entrepreneurial journey. Now, what does that have to do with barbecue? Got you. We just launched season 3, episode 1, featuring Georgia's own Isaiah Morgan of Zeke's BBQ. Isaiah and I sat down and we get into the nitty gritty, the numbers, the taxes, and the documents needed to start your own barbecue business the right way, the legal way. Get all your paperwork in order. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Just make sure you check it out. I'll have that link in the show notes as well. And that has been a wrap on the hot and fast section of This Week in Barbecue. Now, before I get into the question and answer portion, I did want to go back and mention that Corky's Barbecue in East Memphis did experience a fire. Now, the Good news of that is no one was hurt. Their rigs are okay. They just had some fire and water damage to their dining room. So anyone who had pre-orders or things of that nature for catering gigs, they will be fulfilled. They're just closed down until they can get things right back and back on their feet. So I'm really happy that you're still in the game, Corkies. I'm extremely happy to hear that no one was hurt. That's definitely the most important, but wanted to make sure you guys were made aware of it. And sadly, there has been another closing of Golden Rule Barbecue. As I touched on earlier in the episode, it's just every day seems like we're losing more and more. That's why us backyarders, we've really got to push together and support our local guys and come together and make some change. Support your local mom and pop barbecuer. It can literally make a world of difference. Now, let's head into this week's Q&A section. All right, guys, so this question comes from Rob B. Little. He asks, what is the most critical part of the cook when pertaining to ribs, the time or the temperature, or is it something else? Well, Rob, thank you for that amazing question. And the answer is a little bit of everything, to be perfectly honest. You don't want to overcook your ribs, so you want to be mindful of the amount of time that you've got them smoking. The temperature is also very important because you don't want it too high to where you're over grilling them, you're not even smoking them, and you're really rendering that fat out too fast and it ends up dry. We've all seen those ribs where they're sliced and it's just stringy and you don't see any moisture in there, right? The best thing I can suggest for you when doing ribs, make sure you season them well. Pull that membrane off. I don't care what anyone tells you. Pull that membrane off. Take that membrane off, season the front and the back, and try to keep your ribs adjacent from your heat. You don't want to right over that source. So if you've got something like a kettle style cooker and you don't have multiple levels to it, keep your heat source on the right, put your ribs on the left, make sure there's a nice little quarter-sized water pan in between the two so you keep that moisture, and monitor the temperature. Make sure that smoke is still going. Make sure you're not losing too much heat. If you feel as though you're butting up against something and you're not sure, it's okay to wrap early. Wrap early if you feel that's necessary. That wrap is going to concentrate that heat and make sure those ribs turn out nice and tender. But Rob, thank you again for asking that question. I hope this helps you out. If you're looking for a bit more information, drop me a line over at thisweekinbarbecue@gmail.com. Thanks, brother. All right, this next question is from Bill Anderson. He asks, do I prefer cooking catering style or competition style? Well, I'm not a competitor, so that sort of answers the question, but I definitely just like cooking my style of barbecue, and I'll warn against trying to cook competition style barbecue for the retail world, because that is a completely different type of cooking. It really, really is. You're basically packing in so much flavor into just one bite, because oftentimes that's all you get is one bite and chuck it to the side. There are just certain things that are carried on throughout, but you don't want to approach retail or catering barbecue like you would competition barbecue. Keep that in mind, bud. All right. This question comes from OJ the Foodie. She asks, do I ever make broths out of the bones from my proteins? Short answer, yes. Long answer, hell yes. I'm very big on using as much of all of my ingredients as I possibly can. Maybe it's from, being raised on a farm. Might have something to do with it, but I try not to waste anything at all during my cooks. I mean, after I trim my briskets, I'm making some smoked tallow out of them, and then I'm using that tallow for everything. It's just so amazing. I suggest you do the same. If I'm making beef ribs, after I've pulled the meat and everything off of them, I take those bones and I make a very concentrated smoked beef broth. If I plan ahead throughout the week, I really have those ends of onions and garlic ends and stuff like that in a little bowl container that I can toss in with the broth to add some extra aromatics. It's the same reason why I keep the stems from my rosemary after I pluck them off, because that's extra flavor. That's extra something that can be added to broths that I can then use to make a sauce that can separate my food from the next person's. So do I use the bones left over from my cooks to make additional items like broth? Most definitely. Thanks for the question. All right, so this is a two-parter, two questions put into one with two various answers, but they go together. Follow me, guys. Someone asked, what wood do I recommend using for making jerk chicken? followed up by someone else asking, are there any ingredients or cooking materials that I would like to use more, but I find hard to come by? And the two meet in the middle. I would love to get a steady supply of pimento wood, but can't get it here. How does pimento wood work for the first portion? Well, pimento wood is what traditional jerk chicken is cooked over. It's what really adds that extra flavor. And prior to COVID, I could get some shipped over, but now shipping rates, you guys know, it is just extremely expensive and costly for everything in general. So the closest thing I can get on this side that really works is I've figured out a great combination of mesquite, hickory, and oak that really gets the job done most of the time. So that's my little trick there and answer to that. But if I could get a steady supply of pimento, I would just shut down and just make a jerk chicken shop. That's all I do all day, every day. But that's not the option at this point in time, so I make do with what I've got. Thanks for the question, guys. Now, this next question is a very interesting one that I don't think I've ever gotten before. Allie Rose asks, what do I do to make sure I'm not inhaling all of that smoke while I'm cooking? Well, if I'm doing my job right, you really shouldn't see any smoke aside from the startup or if I toss on a log that might be a little too green. But aside from that, I do breathe differently and in a certain way when I am opening up the cook chamber. And, there's that little faint, thin blue. That's what we want, guys, when we're running our rigs. That comes out. There are a lot of different breathing techniques you can do, or you can just hold your breath. There's, once you've done this numerous times, you just sort of fall into that routine of what you need to do when you're doing something particular. When you're adding meat or adding wood or adding fire, you sort of know not to look directly in. You know exactly not to just toss stuff in because the ashes flies back in your face. There's definitely different things that are occurring while you're running your rigs that you may not even know you're doing. And I think she may have asked this because of a live that I did, but you can get a lot of smoke inhaling while cooking if you're not running a clean fire. So that's why fire management and running a clean fire is so important. And this craft is a bit taxing. You're on your feet. There's a lot of lifting, a lot of grabbing, a lot of this. You can get early onset carpal tunnel. You can get cataracts. It can affect your lungs. It's kind of trippy, to be perfectly honest with you. So you've got to be a little out there to want to do this. But as long as you're taking care of yourself and you're making sure that you're following proper breathing techniques and you're not just shoving your head in there. I think there's a guy that works for the Times or something. He did like a 24 hours at Franklin's, and he just put his whole body into the smoke and was breathing. His eyes were worn. He couldn't breathe. And they were trying to tell him, like, why are you doing that? There's a different way. So once you've done it enough, you sort of figure out what works best for you. That helps protect yourself and your body. And Allie, thank you for that question. It's very thoughtful and very sincere. So I appreciate that. All right. And our last question on this episode of This Week in Barbecue is from Elle Kisner. She asks, she wants to get into barbecue, wants to get into grilling and smoking. What is a good meat to start with? Well, since everything's more expensive than it usually is, my answer is still always the same. Chicken, preferably a whole chicken. Chicken is very forgiving. It is very affordable for now. And it traps and captures flavor so well, so easily. And you can do so many things in the preparation phase of that chicken to set yourself up for success. The top thing I would suggest doing is going to be brining your chicken. That's going to add some flavor and some moisture into the bird. So maybe it is your first time the fire gets away from you, running it too hot. It's not going to dry out as fast as a bird that wasn't. You're still going to get that flavor in there. But chicken is a really, really good beginning meat to learn and understand how your rig works. Actually, chicken is the first thing I cook on all of my rigs when I first get them. Right after I've done the initial seasoning and burnout and reseason, chicken is the first thing that goes on there. It's just one of those things. I love the extra fat that drips down and starts to coat everything, but that's what I do. You don't have to, just my suggestion. But if you do, I really hope it works out for you. And please send me some photos. Let me know how the cook goes. Love to follow along as you go through this barbecue journey. All right, guys. That is it. That's a wrap on this week's episode of This Week in Barbecue. I have been your host, Rashid Phillips. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and share, because we're really trying to get this podcast out there. We want to get it to as many people in the barbecue community as possible and keep you guys up to date, because news has never tasted so good. Take care, guys. Thanks for watching.